Hi, everyone, and welcome to Tor and Friends. Today, I am here with the amazing, brilliant, super Caroline, who is a nutritionist, well-being coach, and burgeoning breathwork practitioner. We will definitely be talking about the breath today because I had an incredible breathwork experience yesterday, and I think there's something really interesting there to be explored. In addition to my own like meditative spiritual practice, that's something I'm definitely going to sort of venture into further, but we'll get further into that later on in the podcast. Like I said, we're here today with Caroline today. I met her at Remind Studio in Victoria, where we have both worked. I mean, I still work there. And we just hit it off immediately. It was like sparks going off basically, and the conversations just flowed all the way from the beginning. And actually, today's podcast I'm going to put you slightly on the spot here, sorry about that. Do you have a word, because we are at the beginning of 2024, do you have a word for 2024 and why?
Do you know what? I didn't initially have a word. I haven't
Mm,
thought of a word yet in 2024. But when you were saying that, the word expansion came in. Um,
mm,
I think in lots of ways, I'm already kind of feeling expanded in
mm,
2024, and I'm feeling that energy. I was kind of saying to you before that 2024, it feels like a lighter, kind of more joyful year, and I'm
mm-hmm,
feeling really open to kind of what's going to come through. So yeah, expansion in my personal life, my business, it's kind of like growth, that sort of feeling I'm getting.
mm.
So yeah, how about you? Have you got a word?
I do have a word, and the word for this year is surrendering.
I love it.
Um, because if there's anything I've learned over the 1.5 year of sort of really delving into working for myself and so on and so forth, is that I can put loads of stuff out into the world, but it doesn't necessarily always come back in the way that I expected to.
Mm,
So surrendering to me means surrendering to where my intuition draws me. It means surrendering to the outcome. It means really putting in effort, right, into doing good work, connecting with good people, working on good projects, but always keeping in my rearview mirror and sort of within my mind that the outcomes that I am looking for may not be what the universe has in store for me. So it's really just it's like I had a shower thought this morning, as you do,
love a shower.
and and it was just like life is happening. Life is unfolding regardless of how I'm feeling.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Life keeps on going.
Hmm.
Time keeps on going regardless of how I'm feeling. So why not do my best at bringing some joy into that?
100%. It's like putting in that work and then just trusting as well,
Yeah,
because there's only so much we can force do, like, be in that masculine energy. It's like we have to take that aligned action, but then we have to
yeah,
trust that it's gonna come what's meant for us is gonna come through, and also
yeah,
be way better than you planned in your planner, you know? It's like
yeah,
allowing that space for those things to come through that are better than you can think.
yeah. So just do good stuff and then surrender and
And
just go,
surrender. I love it.
I'm gonna do some good stuff and then what will be
I'll
basically. I
leave it
think
up to
that's
something bigger than us, right?
yeah, it definitely is. I've just noticed that we are both wearing black, and we're also, for those of you who are on video, we're also both wearing a necklace. I mean, which are sort of quite similar in shape. I mean, I have a crystal in here, but it's both sort of gold. Yeah,
Is yours is it what's inside? Is it a
it's
gold in the
it's a
middle?
citrine. It's a citrine crystal in the middle.
That's so funny. I've got a citrine crystal right here,
I love that, and that's a really nice one too. Though it's clear, that's rare. That's brilliant, brilliant.
sitting right next to me, and you've got citrine on your necklace. So that's very weird and synchronized.
I love that. I love that. So, expansion. I like that word too. Like expanding. I've been
Yeah,
coming across this word which is called like magnetism. It's a good word. Yeah, I
yeah.
like the word magnetism. But
Mm,
expansion is brilliant. So just expanding.
mhm.
So nutrition. Why nutrition? Why is that the modality? Because there's tons of modalities to pick from. Why did you choose nutrition?
There are tons of modalities, and I think I'm gonna keep on exploring more and more modalities
Mm,
as I go. I've got that, like, hunger for kind of continuing to learn and grow and expand in
mm,
different ways, but I guess nutrition was one of my first steps kinda into the world of wellness. Essentially, when I think about kind of why I even got into it, when I really kind of go back and back and back, it's like essentially it began through grief, I guess. So when I was 20, I lost my mum, and following that, um, I couldn't feel the grief at the time, and um, I really kind of experienced. A lot of different things within my physical and mental health throughout that grief. and and I think that kind of initiated my journey into self discovery, self healing, and all these different modalities. And I kind of got to a space. Obviously, there's the spiritual side, which I'm sure we're going to delve into, but the physical side, like I was experiencing gut issues, hormonal issues. It was really impacting my physical health.
mm,
And it was at that point where I was like, I need to make some changes here because I really want to heal. I want to feel better. Not only do I want to actually process and feel the grief, but I also really want to nurture and give my body what it's really needing as well physically. So I think that the nutrition side was just like the first step for me. And
mm,
I saw a nutritionist, and she helped me hugely. Like, she really seriously helped me heal my gut basically. And I was like, wow, this is incredible. Kind of really taken with this. And through that experience, I was like, oh, I actually think I want to train in this and do this for other people and help them how I've been helped. So that was like the first. I think nutrition is just kind of was the first step for me into it. But alongside that, um, kind of the spiritual, emotional healing is such a key part for my own kind of personal journey, and also it's starting to be within my kind of professional journey as well. So, yeah, that's kind of
mm,
began, I guess.
And thank you for sharing that personal aspect of your sort of origin story. And sorry to hear about your mother passing whilst you were so young. I mean, that must have been, and I mean, I think that's a really interesting thing that you've just sort of touched on, which is the sort of the psychological traumatic experience, or like how those experiences can impact our body, our gut, just or other places, that sort of psychosomatic connection, which can be incredibly powerful, and seemingly not enough people are like aware of that.
Yeah. Yeah. There's such a strong link between our brain, our mind, and our gut, and
Mm,
other systems in the body that we don't really realize is happening. They're constantly communicating with each other, our brain and our gut, through neurotransmitters and basically whilst it's so important to do the healing around kind of the food that you're putting in your body and how you're actually looking after and nurturing like your gut microbiome, for example, doing the kind of the healing, the emotional healing is such um a key pillar of your gut
mm,
health and other systems in your body. So yeah, I think it is that thing, like, kind of historically people have really seen physical and mental health so separately, but just the more we learn, it's just like they are so intertwined. um
mm,
so yeah, it and grief itself, grief can just manifest in physical symptoms, and if like it's like the body keeps the score, right?
hmm
It can come out in all these different physical manifestations, and it can be like, why have I got this symptom? Why, like, what's physically wrong? But actually, it's like what's the root cause? Is it potentially the
mm,
grief? Is it the burnout? Is it the stress? Is the constant cortisol being released and being in that fight or flight? So, yeah, I just think it's such a key component of kind of healing, really. Yeah.
mm, mm. That is really 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 fascinating to think about. You are doing a breathwork practitioner course program,
Yeah.
and how is that? How would you say? I mean, I suppose you're still sort of in the midst of it, but like, how are you feeling doing that in your body compared to other healing practices that you've done? Like, how is that sort of supporting your well-being?
Mhm, mhm. For me, breath work, it really helps me to shed those layers. And like it feels like I'm going in there and I'm reprocessing things that need to move. So
Mm,
often, when we go through stress, or something, trauma, or something that's kind of putting our body in that fight or flight, we hold our breath in those
mm,
moments, and then that energy that should have moved, um, gets stuck and stored in our body. So breath work is kind of like going in there and reprocessing it and letting that stuck energy come out of our body, so it's no longer kind of living in there. So for me,
mm,
I feel like it's doing that for different layers of emotion
mm,
to move.
mm,
Um, yeah, and I also just think it's really supporting me on my spiritual journey as well.
mm.
So,
How
and I
so?
physically as well. How so? Breaking through some limiting beliefs. Like I'll
Mm,
take a limiting belief maybe into my breathe on it, and that helps me to work through it. And just also like I do a lot of kind of visualization in it at the end, and
mhm.
kind of bringing in like my higher self and connecting with that as well is quite a strong element of it. So yeah, I think it's supporting me in a few different ways at the moment.
So I'm gonna ask you, like, what does your spiritual practice looks like? Like, how does that show up in your daily life?
Um, so the practices, or how does it feel for me, or
Both.
yeah, I think I think spirituality in general, I kind of feel like, well, it's definitely like self discovery. I would say
Mhm,
like coming home to myself in a way. I think um I can't when I think about like my spirituality, I kind of think about these two it kind of feels like two different energies for me. One feels this really expansive energy where I'm like connecting with something a lot bigger than me. So the universe, the source energy, like my higher self, and like I'm kind of co-creating with that. And through that, there are these lessons that I'm learning, and things that I'm going through to kind of get closer to kind of my whole authentic worthy self. And
mhm,
then also alongside that, I feel like it's such like an internal personal, like such an intimate, like, so this is this expansive side, and then there's this really close intimate, it's just me and me. And like
mm,
that feels, it still feels expansive, but that feels so incredible as well, to have this real internal journey where I'm just digging and learning about myself, and shedding layers, I guess, from the past, and just also just yeah, that self discovery, getting to know myself more deeply. So yeah, and then the practices, I guess, yeah, breath work is a really strong one for me, as well as kind of meditation. I know, as you are an expert on, but kind of having that time for quiet, because then I think that's when things come through. um,
mm,
and just calming everything down as well. Like we were talking before, like nervous system regulation. I think that's such a key part, as well as kind of the releasing, like the emotions. It's calming everything down and feeling really safe. I think that's a really key part for me, especially with kind of what I've gone through in the past. But yeah, and journaling is a big one for me as well. But yeah, I mean, I could talk about my practices all day. I love it all, and I'm always like open to kind of doing more as well.
mm. I loved your articulation of sort of the connection with the divine, with source, and the sort of expansion of that and the co-creation of that. Because I suppose in so many ways it is kind of co-creation and the lessons and the learnings and that, but then also it's the dichotomy. Because there's it's almost like a real dichotomy there in many ways, and I can relate to that sense of that sense of like when you're in that meditative space and everything feels possible and expansive and open, and it's sort of like your sense of self just melts away and you connect with that sense of oneness, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But then you come back down to earth, and
You gotta
you
get on with
have
your day.
you have to get on with your day, but you also like I really enjoyed the what you said about the sort of intimate experience or intimate relationship that you have with your sort of earthly experience and seeing working through that as a spiritual practice in on itself, because
Mm,
it's like it's almost like you could, I mean, it's like you could articulate it in the sense of like it's the sort of the spiritual mind, which is this sort of expansive, open, never-ending thing, and then you got the physical mind, which is mad or angry or sad because somebody stole your lollipop when you were 5, you know? So
and that's still a trigger now.
and that is still a trigger now when somebody doesn't share their fries, you know? It's a sort of and it's the constant sort of there is a tension between that, but there's also a beautiful collaboration between that, right? And how you can sort of weave those sort of spiritual mind and the physical mind together. Obviously, not sort of spiritual bypassing, but sort of just weaving and creating your own philosophy of life, which I think is a, and I relate to what you just said so much because that's sort of in a similar way to how I feel in this sort of this expansion, but then also deal with that I have an upset tummy,
Yes,
you know,
exactly.
and the grief and the sort of more earthly sort of emotions, and they do sort of go hand in hand, you know, they seem separate but they're not separate, you know, they are so intrinsically interlinked. So beautiful. That was a very nice way of that was a very nice way of putting it, Caroline. You were talking about what kind of, because visualization is like a core of my practice.
Mm.
How do you do visualization? Like, what does that look like to you?
Yeah, visualization. I guess I kind of what I like to come back to is like I guess it's like I visualize my higher self, like what she looks like, what she's wearing, what she's doing, how she's interacting, um, and just try and connect with her really. And I think my journey is just kind of keeping coming back to I guess is visualizing your kind of ideal life, not in a way of like I need everything to be perfect, but just visualizing things you really want to connect with, right? And then
Mm,
the more you connect with that in your visualization, the more that's going to come through in your reality. And also just like playing with it, enjoying it. So like being in that visualization and being like, ooh, like what are the really nice feelings I want to feel right now? You know, what news am I telling someone on the phone, or like who am I supporting, or like who am I meeting, and just going into that kind of world and playing around with it. And I just think that that is really beautiful because the more we connect with the vibrations of those things,
mm,
the more we're gonna be a magnet for them in our reality. So yeah, I just like to play around with like my future self, my kind of dream life, and how I'm and the feelings I'm feeling, in that visualization.
mm, yeah, exactly. What are one of the things that you're currently finding challenging with your spiritual practice? Like, what is one of the challenges that you've sort of recently overcome, or maybe that you're obviously currently going through? Like, obviously, share as much or as little as you like. But yeah, what are some of the sort of challenges that you've had to go through on your journey? Because I'm sure there's lots of people who's listening to this who are like just starting out, or they're a couple of months in, or they're in the midst of it. It's like, what are some of the things that you have found challenging?
Mhm. I think having your own business, like, it's kind of like the deepest, like, personal journey you're gonna go on because
Hmm.
you know, especially if it's like you that's offering something, you that's gonna bring that modality and that healing to that person. It is hard to kind of separate the two. And so I think it's kind of I think your worthiness can get kind of tied in with that.
Hmm.
And so it's working through those limiting beliefs that come up. Like even around like being seen, like showing up and being seen, and that can feel too much sometimes. It's like I don't want to do it, I don't want to do it. But the more you face those and break through those limiting beliefs, and kind of
Mm.
realizing like I am worthy of taking up space, I'm worthy of being seen, the more you're going to really kind of grow. So I think whilst having your own business, like it has brought up a lot of challenges and lessons for me. It's actually also been a portal for me to like heal things personally and break through certain limiting beliefs. Like I'd say, yeah, around worthiness, being enough, and being seen. I think they're the
Mm,
kind of challenging ones that have come up for me, probably.
mm. And let's say somebody was listening to this and they were just starting out on their spiritual journey. What
Mm.
would be like your 2 cents? Like, what would be your recommendation?
So which kind of practices to begin with, do you think?
Yeah,
Or
like what's the first step? Like if somebody's like, I think somebody needs to change. I think I need to go on a bit of like a spiritual journey. I don't know exactly what that means. Like let's say you're having a friend came to you and him or her was like, or they, I guess, were like, Caroline, I know that you've been on a bit of a journey. Like, how would you recommend that I start? Like if a friend came to you and asked you that question.
yeah, I think first of all, it's creating some space for it. So creating some space because I think when we're just like going from one thing to the next in our lives and not stopping, um,
Mm,
we don't open up that space for these things to come in, and we
mm,
want to get really tuned in with our intuition. And so I think number one, I would just create that space. Like maybe it would be in the morning, and I would take some space just to breathe, you know,
mm,
just to breathe, and kind of calm everything down, rather than that doing mode. I'd get into my feminine, which is like the being mode. So just allowing. So I'd probably sit, have some space, breathe. Maybe I'd just do some like box breathing, which is like
mhm,
4 counts in, hold for 4 counts in, hold for 4, and just get myself into a nice regulated, calm space, and then just listen really, just see what comes through. And maybe I would do some visualization as well around what I'm wanting to call in more of.
mm,
But I also think journaling is a nice place to start. First of all, you can get like the funky stuff out onto paper that's maybe ruminating around in your brain. Like you can kind of say to yourself, if it's down on paper, if I really need it, I can read it later, but like it's safe
mm,
to let it out of my brain. But also journaling just unlocks a lot of things that you maybe didn't realize you're wanting to kind of connect with. So yeah, I'd
mm,
kind of start by doing some initial meditation and kind of calming breathing and journaling is where I'd begin, I think.
mm. Those are really good, really, really good suggestions. Yeah, it's like creating that space for stillness,
Stillness,
right?
yeah.
Creating that space for stillness and letting the intuition come through. You used the word intuition there. What does that mean to you?
It's just that knowing, that kind of like, yes, I think often we can get stuck in the maybe, like, do I want this? Do I not want this? Because
Mm,
and that's kind of conditioning. Like maybe you have an initial yes, but then suddenly it's like, oh, but I can't do that because of X, Y, Z,
mm,
or like it's a no, but I should do that because she wants me to do it. I need to
mm,
be a good person in that sense. So I need to do that thing. But I think it's like the more you get you more you strengthen your intuition, the more easily it's like that's a no or like that's a yes, and
mm,
then follow it. And then the more you follow it, the more right things are going to come in to your life. And it's just a muscle really to really strengthen. But I think what can be confusing, and it's something that I'm still learning, is the difference between anxiety and intuition.
mm,
It's quite a common thing to get confused about, because you can kind of have this feeling of, oh, am I just anxious about it, or is my intuition telling me it's dangerous, for example? And they can get quite blurred. But what
mm,
I've been learning is that intuition actually feels really quite neutral. So
mm,
if it's an intuitive thing, it's just like, yeah, that's just what it is. Whereas anxiety can start to bring up this like worry and overthinking and kind of rumination. So I think if it feels, even though it could be a really amazing thing, if your intuition is saying yes, it often just has that kind of neutral feeling, and not in like a bland, boring way, but in a way of like, that's just what it is, you know?
Mm,
So
mm.
I think it's just learning to strengthen that muscle and follow those gut feelings.
Yeah, and also, yeah, absolutely, and also, I suppose to appreciate that anxiety is actually an alarm bell. Your
Mm.
anxiety is showing up for a reason, right?
Yeah,
Like there is something there to explore, and I suppose just appreciating that there is a reason why the anxiety is showing up and trying to understand the reason for that or the need that is not being fulfilled. It's like, I don't know, let's
yeah,
say you're dating someone and they are taking 3 hours longer to respond than you'd like them to, and you get really anxious and you're like, oh, they don't like me anymore, blah, blah, blah. It's like,
yeah.
there is a reason for that
Mm,
anxiety to be showing up, right? So it's just like
yeah.
holding space for that to exist, and then also to understand, like, I don't know, it's like abandonment, or is it how I view it, is my judgment, like what is the sort of root cause of my anxiety to show up, basically. Yeah.
100% is like feeling that feeling, like, allowing yourself to feel those
Yeah.
feelings, and then being like, okay, but actually, what it rather than then acting on it maybe in that moment,
Mm.
like for example, with that example you're saying, like ringing them and being like, why aren't you calling me or something like that?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like taking that breath and being like,
Mm.
why is this triggering me? Because
Mm.
another scenario like that, someone else could be like, 3 hours is absolutely fine time to take to reply to
Yeah.
something. So it's like, what is the trigger? And going back to what I like to do when I do get triggered is going back to the first time I felt that feeling. And often
Mm.
it is literally, yeah, when I'm 5 years old, or,
I
18,
stole your lollipop,
18 years
basically.
old.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Or like, is it reflecting on something from a really early relationship or a parent or something like that? And that's what needs to be healed. And when you and I think it's doing the healing around that, and it's also in the moment when we do feel triggered, it's doing the somatic practices. So
Mm.
it's going and maybe doing some breath work, or it's doing some shaking or dancing, or just getting that
Yeah.
energy out of your body, going on a run even, and rather than going towards that trigger and being like, you've upset me, it's okay, where's it coming from? And long term doing the healing around that, and short term doing some somatic practices with it to get
Mm.
out
Mm.
of the body.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, exactly. I've just read Non-Violent Communication. Have you read it?
I haven't, but I've seen it, and yeah, I'd love to read it.
It's
Is it
so
good?
good. It's
Yeah.
so good because it talks about it. That one is more sort of focused on anger, but again, it talks about the same thing of like, not like responding to the anger, or like somebody like, you made me angry. It's more about understanding what is it within yourself that is being triggered by that stimulus, and then
Mm,
finding the need and the feeling behind the anger, and then
mm,
communicating that in a healthy way. And then it's a really, I think it's a really, really good book. But I think you could replace anger with like fear, anxiety, worry. There's always like an unmet need underneath
mm.
that feeling, basically, which is what he
Exactly.
sort of proposes in that book, which I think is really uh, fascinating. And I hadn't heard that articulation before, which I thought was really, really useful.
It's so true. It's like, what is that inner child needing in that
Yeah,
moment?
yeah,
And that's not to say you can't feel those feelings of anger either. Like, within your space, for example, you can go
mm,
and do some anger release and
mm,
feel like that's okay to, we don't have to suppress
mm,
it all. But it's like feeling it maybe, in your own space, and then, or it's still expressing, it's still expressing, but then just also tending to that unmet need. Because now we're the adults, we need to tend
mm.
to our inner child, right? We need to attend to our inner children.
Gosh,
It's
so
our
boring.
responsibility. It's so boring.
So boring. Yeah, yeah, and that's also what he sort of talks about in that book, is that he's saying like this way of expressing your anger is a way of not suppressing it, basically, to sort of connect with the need, and then communicating that need is a way
Empowering
of,
it.
it's an empowering way of expressing your anger, rather than, because it's like rage never wins.
No, no.
It's just destructive.
Yeah.
You never. So it's an interesting, yeah, it's a fascinating book. Telling everybody right now
I'm gonna read it, Tor. Honestly, I will. That's exciting.
that they should pick it up because I think it's really, really fascinating, really, really
Have you
fascinating.
have you felt that within your life? Like, have you felt a difference in terms of kind of
Mm.
how you're interacting with others now since reading it?
And there was a lot of stuff in that book which I already knew because of the type of coaching training that I've done. Like
Yeah.
I think the book that the sort of the woman behind my coaching program and nonviolent communication go together quite well as like companions.
Mhm.
And because there's loads of stuff that talks about in her literature and sort of her programs, which is quite similar to nonviolent communication and the sort of essence of that. However, I felt that nonviolent communication came with some other frameworks which were really helpful supplements to the frameworks which already existed within my sort of coaching program,
Yeah.
or like within the coaching training that I've done. So yeah, there's definitely certain things which I'm not trying to do differently, although it's hard because we're all humans, but it doesn't mean that we can't change.
Yeah.
Change is very much possible. I don't like the phrases, oh, a zebra doesn't change his stripe. A zebra can change his stripe, trust me.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Neuroplasticity is real.
It's real, exactly.
So
We rewire those pathways. It's where we put our
yeah,
attention, isn't it? And that's the
yeah,
thing, but it's about having compassion along the way as well, because
yeah, yeah.
can't always get it right. We can't be perfect, but
You
it's
won't. Yeah,
between taking that step and in between that reaction and being like,
yeah.
what can I do differently in this moment? And the more we do that, the more we're not, the less we're going to get triggered by those same things.
So I have been pulling some tarot cards for people that come on the podcast. Would you like me to pull a card or two? How does that feel?
Absolutely love that. Yes, please.
Yeah, yeah. To begin to bring the podcast to like a close. That's what I usually do basically.
Yeah.
I pull two tarot cards and just see what shows up. This will
Okay.
be sort of around the energies that are around you right now, maybe something to focus on, maybe something to release. I'm just gonna pull some cards and see what shows up, you know?
Okay. Yeah. Great.
Yeah, yeah. Let's let's do that. Have I given you a reading before? No. Yes?
I've been to your one of your classes, but
Oh
I
yeah, you
think
came to my class, didn't you? Yeah.
kind of healing, chakra
Yeah.
healing. I don't think we did. I'm not sure if we pulled a card. I can't remember.
Oh no, we must have, because I didn't do the breathworky classes yet when you were, or like the breathing.
Yeah, we did the bit of breath work,
Oh,
but
so maybe
maybe
you
we
came.
did. I can't remember.
I can't remember either. Anyway, here we are. I'm gonna pull some cards. Um, okay. What have I pulled for you this morning, Caroline? Morning, afternoon, it's the afternoon.
Good
Um,
afternoon, yeah.
I have pulled the Six of Cups.
Okay.
Do you have any understanding of the tarot cards?
Um, I mean, I've had tarot card readings in the past, but I don't know them
Right,
off by heart.
right,
So
right,
no,
right.
yeah, definitely explain.
I pulled the Six of Cups, which looks like this.
Okay.
Um, which there's like two people sitting together, having a good time, enjoying each other's company, and the word that came to me when, and I think we kind of talked about this just before we also turned on the podcast and started recording, which is about community, which is about really nurturing that community and really taking advantage of the community and the people that are around you and really connecting with the space and the place. And because obviously you've moved somewhere new, um, and you've been there for a few months now, right?
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
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 So I think that's really what this card speaks to, which is really about connecting with the people and place that you are now and really sort of integrating yourself into that and taking advantage of the supportive people that are around you and also wants to work with you. I'm also getting that perhaps there are some people in your local space that wants to work with you more
Yeah.
and sort of allowing yourself to understand that you don't have to do this all by yourself.
Yeah. 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 I
Because
love that so much. That feels so relevant right now.
yeah,
Yeah,
because as solo entrepreneurs, we find ourselves, oh, I don't want to, I just want to do it by myself.
yeah.
It's not always necessary, you
No.
know?
And that connection can just bring so much into your life, those
Mm,
conversations you have, and just yeah, I think really, really nurturing that community, I think is so key for me right now, and yeah,
yeah.
really excited for
So
that
I
kind
think
of.
it's like the words are like community and collaboration. That's what I think. Community and
Oh,
collaboration.
I love that because I'm actually collaborating on my first retreat day.
Are
Um,
you?
at the end of February, and yeah, and I met the girl that I'm doing it with very just like I know that we manifested each other, so that just feels really exciting. So yeah, it's those sort of things
That is spot on, right? That is what you're doing. That's brilliant. The second card that I have pulled today are the Knight of Pentacles.
mm,
Yeah, the Knight of Pentacles. What do I feel from this? What do I feel from this card? Um, I think what I see from this card is to not disregard opportunities that, on like first impression, may not seem that interesting or lucrative. Or like they
mm,
may seem like, oh, I don't have time to do that, or it's not going to just pan out. I don't believe in it. But actually, I think there is something to just recognize that some of those tiny seeds can grow into some really, 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 really interesting things. So if something on the face of it seems perhaps like, oh, that's just not for me, but
yeah,
actually, if you just sit with it and just sort of play with it, I guess, and experiment, it can sort of blossom into something quite interesting.
yeah.
So yeah, if something comes that on the face doesn't seem that sort of interesting, I think it could potentially be interesting.
Okay, okay. So sit with it and don't
Sit with it.
don't
Don't
reject
yeah,
it away. It's like what
yeah,
actually is there here for me? Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Exciting. Definitely gonna keep that in mind. Is that and that energy, like how long is that lasting? When you pull a card, like how long is that just for kind of right now, or is that for like how long does that kind of stay with you?
So I
That
think for now, for you, it's I'm getting 3 to 4 weeks.
okay. So the
Three to
next
four
kind of
weeks.
yeah.
Yeah, the next month. And it's so interesting that you said that you were going to hold this retreat together with this friend.
Mm,
Um, because the third card, when I pulled it, is so basically it's the Pope, the Hierophant,
wow. Okay.
and the word that came was like, I think you're going to hold bigger spaces, and obviously that's what you're going to do at the end of the month. So I was about, if you hadn't said that, I was like, I think you're going to hold bigger spaces, but like, so this is
Yeah.
like the masculine version of the high priestess. And I mean, if you're going to hold bigger space, it's like it's organizing, but holding integrity. It's like holding a bigger space for people. Obviously, you will do that in sort of like a flowy way, but it also needs structure.
Yeah.
The day has to flow basically.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So I thought that that card would represent over the next months, and so like the next sort of time period that you will hold bigger spaces basically, which yeah, that's obviously true.
That's so exciting, and that's exactly the expansion I'm feeling,
Mm,
is to expand my business, expand how I'm, you know, giving my offerings to people, and retreat days, retreats, those sort of events where I'm really sharing with more people and holding space for more
mm,
has just been coming. I feel like it's been orbiting me for a while,
mm.
and so like having my first one kind of at the end of next month feels really, really exciting. I'm just really excited to kind of grow that and just keep flowing with it. So yeah, that's really relevant card as well.
Exactly. Any final reflections, any final thoughts that you want to leave the listeners with for 2024?
um yeah, I think just with your spiritual journey, it's about being open, leaving space for that magic to come through, and also sending yourself a lot of love and compassion along the way, and
Mm,
that you're human. You don't have to do it all perfect. You don't have to do your healing journey perfectly. You don't have to
mm,
put all this pressure on you. It's about showing up for yourself, but also allowing. I think allowing
mm,
is such a key part of it all. Allowing
mm,
things to connect with you that are better than you could have imagined, rather than
Hmm.
being controlling and, you know,
Yeah, yeah.
trying to, make things exactly how you think. It's like sometimes we just have to let it all unfold,
Hmm.
in a greater way than we could have planned. But yeah, I think that's it. And the other thing we didn't mention is that we're actually both Norwegian. Well, you are fully Norwegian,
Oh,
but
yeah,
I'm a
that's
little bit
true.
Norwegian, which is another thing that we connect on.
You are a little bit Norwegian. That is very true. Your heritage. Yeah, no, that's absolutely true. Totally forgot about that, but that is true.
Yeah, so another little nugget of how we've connected.
Thank you so much for coming on to the podcast, Caroline. How do people connect with you, by the way, before we end?
So, you can find me. My Instagram is Caroline Rose Wellness. My website is carolinerosewellness.co.uk. And I offer different nutrition programs, and I'm going to be weaving breathwork into that as well. So you can work with me. For my main kind of signature offering is like a 4 month offering. So yeah, Caroline Rose Wellness is where you can find me, and you can chat more if you want support.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. It's been super insightful. It's always so interesting to hear people's journeys and reflections and thoughts. And I loved what you said. It's such a good reminder for myself and other people is to show yourself loads of love and self compassion on the way.
On the way, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. Oh, thank you
Thank you
so
so
much.
much. Bye,
Yeah.
everybody. Bye.